I was sitting there in that cheap office chair they never replaced, the one with the weird stain I'd been looking at for 6 years, when he slid the folder across his desk with that same practiced expression, half grimace, half smile. I knew what was inside before I even opened it. Rejection number 12. 12 times. 12 times I'd been passed over for senior consultant. And I already knew who got it instead of me, someone who'd only been at the company for 8 months. 8 months. The thing is, he said, leaning forward like we were co-conspirators instead of whatever we actually were, Q4 isn't our strongest quarter for leadership transitions. But I've already put your name at the top of the list for spring promotions. I nodded like I believed him. Like I hadn't heard almost those exact words 11 times before. Like I hadn't trained every person who'd been promoted above me since 2018. Then I did something that surprised even me. I started laughing. Not cute giggles. The kind of laugh that makes people uncomfortable. The kind that says, I've finally snapped. His face did this weird thing. His customer service smile glitched. Something funny. Yeah, I said, still laughing. Me. I'm the joke, for believing you. 12 times. So that's how it started. That's the moment I decided to burn it all down. Oh wait, I should probably introduce myself. I was 33 when this happened, working at this boutique consulting firm. We did business transformation consulting for healthcare companies. Sounds fancy, right? 6 years I'd been there. 6 years of being the person they called at 11 p.m. when everything was falling apart. 6 years of being told I was invaluable, but apparently not invaluable enough to promote. Before I go deeper into this mess, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you've ever been in a situation where you felt completely invisible despite working your ass off. Because honestly, it helps to know I'm not alone in this. And trust me, this story goes places even I couldn't have predicted. So, back to that office. That moment. I composed myself and told him I understood. That I was a team player. Then I walked back to my desk, past the new senior consultant, who was literally showing off new business cards to anyone who'd look. Senior consultant. The title that should have been mine almost 3 years ago. Let me give you some context. The company was founded by 3 guys who used to work at one of those big 4 consulting firms. They had this whole we're different, we're family shtick. He was employee number 6. I was employee 23, hired when they were still trying to prove themselves. I automated half their reporting systems. I saved their biggest account when our project manager quit mid-implementation. I routinely worked 60-hour weeks. I delivered every single time. And it wasn't just that they didn't promote me. They'd tell me why. Not enough client-facing experience. So I got it. Not enough leadership. I led a team. Not enough technical expertise. I got certified in whatever new system they were implementing. And after I'd check each box, they'd move the goalposts, again and again and again. Meanwhile, they promoted people around me. A guy who missed deadlines constantly but played golf with the boss. Someone who couldn't build a basic reporting dashboard without my help but was best friends with our director. And now someone whose main qualification seemed to be that they went to the same business school as our CEO. I used to wonder what was wrong with me. Was I not charming enough? Not political enough? Wrong gender? Wrong background? I spent so much time trying to crack the code. But sitting there that day, watching someone parade around with a title I earned years ago, something just clicked. There was no code to crack. The system was just rigged. Not just against me, but against anyone who actually believed merit mattered. That night, I went home and cried. Like, ugly cried. The kind where you're sitting on your bathroom floor at 2 a.m. wondering how you became this person. I called my sister. She listened to me rant for an hour. Then she said something that changed everything. So quit. I can't just quit, I said. I've invested 6 years. That's just sunk cost fallacy talking, she said. She's an economist. She's always diagnosing my life problems with economic theories. It's not that simple, I argued. The job market is tight and I need. No, she interrupted. I didn't say find another job. I said quit, as in stop giving them your best. Stop caring. Stop trying to earn the approval of people who clearly have no intention of giving it to you. I sat with that for a minute. That's not who I am, I finally said. Maybe it's who you need to become, she replied. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about what she said, about how I'd spent 6 years trying to prove myself to people who had already decided not to see me. And something hardened inside me. A plan started forming. See, I knew things. I knew how everything at that company actually worked, not how they claimed it worked in their fancy pitch decks. I knew which clients were on the edge of leaving. I knew which projects were behind schedule. I knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. And most importantly, I knew that despite being denied a promotion 12 times, I was the glue holding at least 5 major client relationships together. The next morning, I went to work like normal. I smiled at the boss in the hallway. I congratulated the new senior consultant. I answered frantic emails from project teams. But something had changed. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Instead, I started documenting everything, every process I'd created, every workaround I'd invented, every client relationship I'd salvaged. I organized it all into a private digital notebook, not company property, my property. Then I created what I called my indispensability map. It was a detailed analysis of exactly how much the company depended on me, where the critical dependencies were, and, this is important, which clients had relationships with me specifically, rather than with the company as a whole. You might be thinking this sounds calculated, cold, even. And you know what? You're right. But 12 rejections will do that to a person. 12 times being told you're not quite good enough when you know damn well you are. It changes you. I gave myself 6 months. 6 months to execute what I started calling my quiet exit. Not quiet quitting. That's when you do the bare minimum. No. I kept working just as hard. But my goal had changed. I wasn't working for a promotion anymore. I was working for myself. The first phase was making myself even more indispensable. Counterintuitive, right? But necessary. I volunteered for the most complex client problems. I became the go-to person for troubleshooting. When our biggest client had an issue, they'd call me directly, not the company's support line. I was careful about it. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't create unnecessary dependencies. I just positioned myself as the solution to problems that already existed. And I documented it all. The second phase was building my escape hatch. I started having coffee with former colleagues who'd left for other firms. I updated my portfolio, not my resume, my portfolio. Because I wasn't looking for another job. I was laying groundwork for something else entirely. Phase 3 was the trickiest. I had to start detaching emotionally while still appearing invested. I stopped taking it personally when the manager would take credit for my ideas in meetings. I stopped feeling hurt when I wasn't invited to leadership lunches. I started seeing the company not as the place I'd given 6 years of my life to, but as a stepping stone to what came next. Around month 4 of my plan, something unexpected happened. They promoted someone else, again. Lucky number 13. This time it was a guy who'd been there 2 years and whose main qualification was being aggressively mediocre but very, very confident about it. Normally, this would have devastated me, but I just smiled and congratulated him. The manager looked confused by my reaction. He'd expected tears, or at least for me to come to the office later to ask what I needed to do better. But I didn't. I just kept working on my plan. By month 5, I'd saved enough money to live on for 6 months without income. I'd incorporated my own consulting business, just on paper at this point. I'd secured a small business loan. And I'd started having very careful, very private conversations with 2 of the company's clients who I knew were dissatisfied. I wasn't poaching, not technically. I was just being helpful. answering questions, providing insights, building relationships outside the company umbrella. Then came the day, 6 months to the day after rejection number 12. I walked into the manager's office without an appointment. "I quit," I said, placing my resignation letter on the desk. The face went through about 5 different expressions in 3 seconds: shock, disbelief, anger, fear, and finally the one I was waiting for, panic. "You can't quit," he said. "We're in the middle of the Heal Pace implementation. You're leading the Meridian Health Project. We need you." I just smiled. 2 weeks' notice. It's all in the letter. "Is this about the promotion? Because we can talk about that. Q3 is coming up and I've been advocating for you." I cut him off. "No, this isn't a negotiation. I'm leaving." And now we're at the part where it gets really interesting, the part where my 6 months of careful planning starts to pay off. The part where they finally realize exactly what they're about to lose. But before I get into that, I need to take a quick breath. Because even now, 2 years later, telling this story makes my heart race. Makes me remember how terrified I was. How close I came to backing down. How many times I almost convinced myself to stay in that comfortable misery rather than risk everything on myself. So do you want to hear what happened next? How they reacted when they realized what I'd done? How my revenge wasn't just sweet, it was sustainable. Because trust me, watching them beg was just the beginning. The 2 weeks after I quit were absolute chaos. I've never seen a workplace implode so spectacularly, and I had front row seats to the whole thing. First, the manager tried to convince the partners that they could easily replace me. Called an emergency leadership meeting, which, ironically, I wasn't invited to, where he apparently said, "Her contributions have been valuable, but we have strong systems in place." That's when they started discovering just how wrong he was. See, I hadn't realized how much of the company's infrastructure I'd quietly built over the years. All those late nights fixing things nobody else wanted to deal with. All those workarounds I'd created because the official processes were garbage. It was like I'd been holding the company together with duct tape and determination for 6 years. By day 3 of my notice period, the panic had set in. Suddenly, the manager wanted me to document everything I did. He scheduled daily knowledge transfer meetings. He even asked if I could create training materials for my replacement, who, by the way, didn't exist yet. "Sure," I said, smiling sweetly. "My hourly consultation rate is $275. His face when I said that? Priceless. Like I'd suggested he give me his firstborn child. "You work here," he sputtered. "For 11 more days. I corrected him. He complained to the partners, of course. But they were already in panic mode because our biggest client had gotten wind that I was leaving. Their CIO had called the CEO directly. I only know this because the CEO's assistant told me over lunch. She said, and I quote, "If she's not on our account, we need to revisit our contract." The assistant whispered across the table, "I've never seen him sweat like that." By the end of the first week, they made their first offer. The manager called me into the office, where he sat with the CEO. "We've been discussing your value to the company," the CEO said, like this was a revelation and not something I'd been trying to tell them for 6 years. "We'd like to offer you the senior consultant position effective immediately with a 15% raise." I almost laughed. The promotion I'd been begging for, suddenly available now that I was walking out the door. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I've already made other arrangements." They looked shocked, like the idea that I might have options beyond the company had never occurred to them. "What would it take?" the CEO asked. "We can go to 20% on the raise." "It's not about money," I said, which was both true and not true. Of course, it was partly about money. I'd been underpaid for years. But it was more about respect. About recognition. About not spending another day in a place that had shown me 12 separate times that they didn't value me. By the beginning of the second week, things got desperate. Systems were breaking that only I knew how to fix. Clients were calling, asking specifically for me. The Meridian Health project was behind schedule, and nobody could figure out the custom reporting dashboard I'd built. That's when they made their second offer, senior manager, skipping a level entirely, with a 30% raise and a seat on the leadership team. I declined again. "You're being unreasonable," the manager said, his fake smile completely gone now. "We're trying to make this right." 6 years, I replied. "You had 6 years to make it right." By day 10, the CEO himself came to my desk. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Name your price," he said quietly. "Whatever you want. Director level. Choose your projects. Work from home. Just stay." For a split second, I wavered. Director level would have been beyond anything I'd ever dreamed of at that company. The money would be life-changing. The power to choose my own projects was tempting. But then I remembered 12 rejections. 12 times being told I wasn't quite good enough. 12 times watching someone less qualified walk away with the promotion I deserved. "I'm sorry," I said, "but my mind is made up." On my last day, I did something that surprised even me. I was professional. I handed over everything they'd asked for. All the documentation. All the contact information. All the project status updates. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't sabotage anything. I just left. As I was walking out, carrying my sad little box of desk plants and coffee mugs, the manager stopped me in the lobby. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You won't last 6 months on your own." I just smiled. "Watch me." Here's where the story shifts, because my revenge wasn't quitting dramatically or making them panic, though that was satisfying. My revenge was what came next. Remember those 2 dissatisfied clients I mentioned? The ones I'd been having careful conversations with? The day after I left, I had official meetings with both of them, not as an employee anymore, but as the founder and CEO of my own consulting firm. 1 week later, one of them canceled their contract with the company and signed with me. Not just the implementation I'd been working on, their entire portfolio of projects. When they found out, the phone rang. "This is a breach of your non-compete," came the voice, shouting. "Actually, it's not," I said calmly. "I never signed a non-compete. Check your records." There was silence, because they knew I was right. In all the paperwork over 6 years, they'd somehow never gotten around to having me sign a non-compete agreement. An oversight that was now costing them millions. 3 weeks after that, another client followed. Their COO told me later that when they called to cancel, they were offered a 40% discount. They declined. By month 3, I had 5 clients, 3 from the old company and 2 new ones through referrals. I was making triple what I'd made before. I hired my first employee, a brilliant analyst who'd been overlooked at her previous firm. The best part? I didn't have to work 60-hour weeks anymore. I set boundaries. I charged what I was worth. I built systems that worked from the start instead of patching broken ones. At month 5, something unexpected happened. One of the people who'd been promoted over me reached out on LinkedIn. She wanted to meet for coffee. "I'm miserable," she confessed, stirring her latte nervously. "Everything's falling apart there. Nobody knows what they're doing. That account you worked on? A disaster. Management blames everyone but themselves." I nodded sympathetically. None of this surprised me. "They talk about you like you're the boogeyman," she continued. "You're actually banned from being mentioned in meetings. But they also can't stop talking about how things worked when you were there." I couldn't help but feel a little smug, but also sad. Sad for the people still trapped there. Sad for the 6 years I'd wasted trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see my value. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked her. She took a deep breath. "I want to work for you." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Excuse me." "I know it's weird," she said, "and I understand if you say no. But you built something amazing in just a few months. You're doing the work you want to do, with clients who respect you. That's what I want." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Was this some kind of trick to get me to reveal my client list? But all I saw was exhaustion. And something I recognized intimately, the desperate need to be valued for your work. "Send me your resume," I said finally, "and we'll talk." 6 months to the day after I left, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a familiar voice came through. My heart skipped a beat. "Hello. What can I do for you?" "We need to talk," they said, voice strained. "Things here are... we're struggling. The quarterly numbers are the worst they've been in 5 years. We've lost 7 more clients since you left." I waited, saying nothing. "We want you back," they finally said. "We'll match whatever you're making now. Double it even. Director level. Equity stake. Whatever you want." I closed my eyes, taking in the moment. This right here was what I'd wanted to hear for so long. Validation. Recognition. The admission that I had been right all along. But it came too late. "I appreciate the offer," I said, echoing the words I'd used when rejecting their previous attempts to keep me. "But I'm not interested." "We're desperate," they admitted, voice cracking. "Please just come in for a meeting. Name your terms." That's when I realized something important. My revenge fantasy had always ended with them begging me to come back, and me triumphantly accepting on my terms. But now that it was actually happening, I discovered I didn't want to go back. Not for any amount of money. Not for any title. Because I'd built something better. Something that was mine. "I'm sorry," I said, and I was surprised to find I actually meant it. "But I've moved on. And you should too." After I hung up, I sat at my desk, my real desk, in my real office, with my company name on the door, and I cried. Not sad tears. Not angry ones. Relief. Release. The final letting go of 6 years of feeling not quite good enough. Today, the company has 17 employees. We've doubled our revenue each year for the past 2 years. We're selective about our clients, our projects, and most importantly, how we treat our people. The one who reached out for coffee? She's now my director of client services. Turns out, when she's not trapped in a toxic workplace, she's actually brilliant. My first hire now runs our analytics division. We even hired their former assistant as our operations manager. The old company, still in business, but they've downsized dramatically. One of the key leaders was let go last year. Another reached out again 6 months ago, this time proposing a merger. I declined politely. The revenge wasn't in watching them struggle. It wasn't even in building something successful of my own. The real revenge was discovering that I never needed their validation in the first place. That I could value myself, even when they didn't. The 12 rejections? They were actually 12 redirections, pushing me toward where I was supposed to be all along. So if you're sitting there right now, feeling overlooked or undervalued, or stuck in a place that doesn't recognize what you bring to the table, please hear me. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't have to keep auditioning for people who've already decided not to cast you. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. And look, I know this story might seem too perfect, too neat, but I promise you, it's real. I have the battle scars, and the tax returns, to prove it. If you connected with any part of this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to walk away from something to find your true worth. I read every comment, and your stories help me feel less alone in mine. Thanks for listening to me ramble for so long. Sometimes I still can't believe how different my life is now compared to where I was 2 years ago. Just remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. See you in the next video.